All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our class. This is Normal Aging versus Dementia. And my name is Lindsey Vajpeyi. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach from Insight Memory Care Center in Fairfax, Virginia. This webinar is part of a four-part series, part of the Dementia-Friendly Prince George's County Northern Sector series. So to begin this evening, I'd like you all to take a look at this tree. This is sort of a brain teaser. Take a look at this tree and see if you can find 10 faces hidden in this tree. So look at that negative space by the branches. Can you find 10 faces in this tree? And I'm going to give you just a moment to work on this. All right, everyone ready? We're going to look at the results, look at the answers, and here they are. I wonder how many of them you were able to find. I think the first time I did this exercise, I was only able to find about half of the faces in the tree. So I'll flip back to the original, and I bet when you look at it now, you're seeing a lot more pop out that you didn't notice. All right, we're going to look at another brain teaser. I want you to read through this paragraph and pick out all of the letter F's. So count up how many letter F's, like farm, how many F's can you find? If I had some Jeopardy music, I'd be playing it for you right now. How many letter F's? I'm reading through it myself. Sometimes I find the right answer and sometimes I don't. All right, I wonder how many of you out there found 25? It's more than that. How many of you found 30? Higher than that. It is actually 36. And you can see them in bold there. And I think what most of our brains miss, if you did not reach 36, we tend to skip right over the F's that are in the word of. And I think we miss a lot of those F's that are right there at the beginning of the line. You know, our brains are just moving so fast. And our last brain teaser, take a look at all of the words on the screen and try to memorize them. All right, have those in your mind. And on the next slide, now, can you find all of those words in this slide? I'm definitely not asking you to try to remember all of the words on this slide, but see if you can find the words from the previous slide scattered among all of these other words. I'll flip back so you can see it again. Here they are. Now, I bet if you were trying to remember them in sort of random order, it was a lot more difficult for you than if you were able to categorize them in your mind. You know, when you think about the months of the year, for example, if you remembered one of them, like April, it may have reminded you that, oh yeah, there was also January, April, June, October, and December. You know, or categorizing the vegetables together. Whoop. My screen likes to flicker sometimes, I guess. Or remembering all of the emotion words. So these are just some examples of different ways that our brains work. You may have found that, you know, one or two of these exercises was much easier for you than another. So has anyone ever found themselves in a situation like this? Have you ever lost your car in a parking lot? I bet many of us have, being here in the DC metro area. What did you feel? I bet there was some fear. Am I going to find my car? Maybe some anxiety. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be late. Some paranoia, maybe denial, maybe depression. And what did you ask yourself? You know, maybe you think things like, where did I put my keys again? Or aside from the parking lot, what was I saying? You know, what was his name again? Or my favorite, what did I come in here for? I find that that happens to me a lot. It might happen to you as well. So what is the difference between age-related changes in memory and learning, and something we should be concerned about? First, we're going to talk about those normal age-related changes. So as we age, our brains are changing, just like our bodies are changing, right? Is your body a little bit different than it was 20 years ago? Probably. Your brain's a little bit different too, and that's to be expected. So most of us will eventually have some trouble coming up with names or words, especially like right on the spot. We might have some trouble doing multiple things at once, multitasking. We think of multitasking being doing things simultaneously, but really what's happening there is that our brain has to really quickly shift from one function to another. And that really quickly shifting part is what starts to change as we age. You may notice a mild decrease in the ability to pay attention. It might take a little bit more time to process information. But as we age, we can still learn new things, we create new memories, we can still improve our vocabulary and our language skills, right? So the things that you might be experiencing, they're slightly irritating, maybe every once in a while a bit embarrassing, but they're really not getting in the way of everyday life. You still make new memories, you learn new things, you still have lots and lots of brain power there. There are some things that tend to make it worse, things that make our cognitive abilities not at top notch. Things that can make it worse, like if you're really under stress, it might be hard to make a decision, it might be hard to process information quickly. Maybe if you're feeling really anxious, that again kind of slows down our thinking process. It could be depression, sort of that withdrawal aspect. Fatigue, when we're really, really tired, if you've had a few sleepless nights, that you don't think as clearly. Or if you're taking some type of a sedating medication, maybe a really strong pain medication, that's something that, again, can affect our cognitive ability, even for a normal, healthy adult. So here's a few ideas about how to compensate for cognitive decline. One thing that we can do is write things down and ask for other information in writing. So I know for me, that's something that I've just always relied on a lot. I'm a list keeper, right? I've got my shopping list, I've got my to-do list, I've got my books I want to read list. That really helps me. We can use electronic reminders, like maybe setting a little timer on your phone when it's time to take a medication or leave for an appointment. We can use organizational systems at home, for example, in the way that you sort your paperwork, your bills, your mail. A lot of adults use things like pill boxes, to help organize the days of the week, maybe the morning and the evening pills. We can focus on one thing at a time, right? As we age, it's harder for our brains to quickly shift from one function to another. So focusing on one thing at a time, doing it well, and then moving on to another task. You'll be more effective. We want to allow enough time for tasks. When we're trying to rush through something, when we feel a lot of pressure, we tend to kind of freeze. So giving ourselves plenty of time, especially for those tasks that do take more concentration. And we can always ask others to slow down when they're presenting information to us. So when we think about aging and health, and really here for this presentation, we're talking about brain health especially. Aging well depends on a number of things. It depends on your genes. What did you get from mom? What did you get from dad? What are you sort of predisposed to? What type of environment are you in? That affects our aging process. Am I in a high pollution area? Am I in an unsafe environment? And then also lifestyle. All of those choices that we make every single day can affect our brain health as we age. So of these three factors, what here is really under our control? We have no control over our genes, right? You got what you got from your parents, that's it. Environment, you have some control, especially within your immediate environment, like your home, keeping things safe, for example. But, in our larger environment, there's only so much any one person can do that's really going to directly impact your own brain health. But lifestyle, that is where you have the most control. And that's where we're going to focus for our presentation tonight. A healthy lifestyle, healthy choices may help you maintain a healthy body and a healthy brain. So what can we do to protect our brain health? We're going to go into these categories, including taking care of your health, eating healthy foods, being active, learning new things, and connecting with others. So taking care of your health. It's really important that we see our physicians on a regular basis, that we get our recommended health screenings at the appropriate times, that we manage any health problems, especially things like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, that we're in good contact with our physicians about these things and we're taking the appropriate steps to keep them under control. We want to consult with our healthcare providers on a regular basis to make sure our medicines are the right things for us. You may have medications that have been prescribed by your primary care doctor, medications prescribed by a variety of specialists, and you might also be taking some vitamins or supplements or over-the-counter types of medications. And you really need someone who can look at all of that together and make sure that that's the right mix for you, that there isn't an unintended side effect or problem that could arise from that. We want to reduce our risk for brain injury due to falls and other types of accidents, by doing things like wearing a seatbelt when we're in the car, wearing a helmet when we ride a bike, being really careful on wet or slippery floors, and in the ground, and quit smoking. For those of you who are out there who smoke, I know you've probably heard that a million times for a million different reasons. Also for your brain health. Smoking is really, really terrible for our brain health. And by stopping smoking, you can take that part of your risk almost down to the level of someone who never ever smoked in just a very short amount of time. Another part of keeping a healthy brain as we age includes eating healthy foods, plenty of fruits and vegetables. There is some research that shows for brain health that berries and dark leafy greens are particularly good for our brains. But having, a colorful plate, having a variety of fruits and vegetables at each meal is really important. Having whole grains instead of those refined grains. We want to eat more of the lean meats, fish, poultry, rather than the high fat, high saturated fat kinds of proteins. We want to look more towards those low fat or non-fat dairy products. We want to use less solid fat in our cooking. So turning to something like olive oil would be healthier for your brain than cooking with butter or with margarine or lard. And we want to have less sugar and salt in our diets. We tend to purchase a lot of processed foods, which have a lot of hidden sugars and salts in them. As we age, our taste buds change, and so we do tend to more heavily salt our foods. It takes more salt for our brains, our taste buds to recognize that sensation, so we tend to use more salt. So just being really mindful of how can I, maybe get a healthier sweet option like some fruit with more of a natural sugar, or how can I season my foods with something else rather than salt. We want to be aware of proper portion sizes. When we go out to eat especially, we tend to get way too big of portions. You go to a restaurant and you might, what is on your plate might be enough for 2 or even 3 meals. So being aware of how much we're eating, how much is a portion size. So for example, something like nuts. Nuts are really good for us, they're good for our brains, but that doesn't mean that we should eat a whole can of nuts all at one time. That's not healthy for us. So thinking about what is a proper portion size. And really making sure that we also get an adequate fluid intake. Plain old water is the best thing. You might be a coffee drinker or a tea drinker, and sure, have your cup of coffee in the morning, have your cup of tea in the afternoon, but throughout the day, really drinking plenty of water is going to be your best bet. It's going to be, not dehydrating like a caffeinated product would be. So plenty of water, find a way to kind of spruce it up if you're not really a water person. Maybe putting some fruit in your water, or if you have a loved one who really isn't taking in enough water and you're worried about them, trying to find foods that have a really high water content. So thinking about something like watermelon or a low sodium soup to get more hydration. So if you're thinking about, well, what kind of diet would this be? There's a lot of different options out there. The Mediterranean diet is really the best model for a brain healthy diet. So it doesn't mean that you have to eat only Mediterranean food, but this would be basically the Mediterranean food pyramid. So we see at the bottom, we have fruits and vegetables and some grains. That's what we get the most of during the day. And then the next level, some fish and some seafood. Then some poultry, eggs, cheese, yogurt, those kinds of things. And then very little of those red meats and those sweets. And then you see on the left, drinking water, very, very important. And then you see wine in moderation. There is no research that shows that you need to start drinking wine and that there's going to be some added benefit to that if you weren't previously enjoying some wine. But the Mediterranean diet does include a very modest amount of wine, particularly red wine. So if you are someone who likes to have a glass of red wine with your dinner each evening, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But again, you don't have to start if that wasn't something you were already doing. And then you see here at the base of the pyramid, you know, things like herbs and spices and beans and nuts and olive oil, you know, these are things that we can add into our diet. And then daily physical activity, also a really important part of that Mediterranean style diet. So I mentioned alcohol. When we think about brain health, we want to avoid excess alcohol. Well, how much is excess? Guidelines would be for a normal healthy adult up to 2 drinks a day for men and up to 1 drink a day for women. However, when someone reaches the age of 65, basically what's the guideline of what's acceptable is basically cut in half. So if you're over the age of 65, that would be about 1 drink a day for men and less than 1 drink a day for women would be considered safe. We also have to think about, well, what's considered a drink? You know, what size is a drink? If I fill that wine glass all the way up to the top, well, that's actually more than what would be considered 1 drink of wine. So you see there a chart at the bottom that has different number of ounces for different types of alcohol. We do know that alcohol can have an effect on our brain health. You know, in that immediate term, that can affect, you know, our speech might be slurred, we would, you know, have impaired driving ability, we might have a fuzzy memory, be dizzy or be drowsy. We know that alcohol slows and impairs communication among brain cells, even with moderate use. And there are even long-term effects of alcohol use, of you know, really heavy alcohol use. There's a specific type of dementia actually that is tied to a vitamin deficiency that's the result of long-term alcohol use. So it's really important to get some help if you do feel like maybe what you're doing, how much alcohol you're taking in isn't quite in that safe zone. Get moving. This is probably the biggest key to brain health. Keeping your body healthy, and especially your heart, is the most important thing you can do to keep your brain healthy. When we get our bodies moving, actually about 25% of our blood with every heartbeat is going to our brain at sort of a resting state. So imagine now your body is moving, you're getting that heart rate up. That's like extra blood flow through your brain, right? That's like fuel for those brain cells to keep them as strong as possible. So physical activity is also great for lots of other things. It reduces the risk of diabetes, heart disease, depression, stroke. You know, these types of diseases people who have these types of diseases do tend to be more at risk for cognitive decline as they age. So getting our bodies moving can be a win-win. Good for reducing risk for diabetes, heart disease, and other conditions. Also good for keeping our brains healthy. We find that getting moving also improves connections among brain cells, and it also helps us prevent falls. You know, keeping your body strong and able to manage any changes in balance. So how much exercise and what kind of exercise? There's a recommendation that we should all get at least 150 minutes of exercise each week. Now you can break that down into whatever works the best for you. Maybe that means 5 days a week for a half hour each. Maybe you don't have time to exercise 5 days a week, but maybe a few times a week, but for a longer period of time. Or maybe you go for like 10-minute walks a few times a day, right? It's finding what works for you. There's no perfect exercise. You know, a lot of us turn to walking. It's accessible, right? You just need a decent pair of shoes. You can walk around your house, you can walk around the mall, you can go outside and you can walk. But it doesn't mean that walking is the best thing. A lot of people enjoy things like yoga and Tai Chi. You might enjoy Zumba, you might enjoy swimming, you might enjoy playing a sport like tennis. It's finding what is best for you, right? What works for your body, and also what's of interest to you, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it, right? You got to find something that you really like. So some ways to start, you might consider trying to move around a half hour most days of the week. Walking is a great place to begin. You can look for programs in your community that help you move safely. And there are also lots of really great programs available online through different kinds of platforms, through your local area agency on aging, a lot of virtual programs right now. So you can find some really safe, gentle exercises, but you do always want to check with your healthcare provider if you haven't been particularly active and if you want to start a more vigorous exercise program. Again, it's finding what is right and safe for you. Also important for brain health is to get enough sleep. Inadequate sleep due to conditions like insomnia and sleep apnea can result in problems with memory and thinking. When we're sleeping, that's giving our body time to build proteins and other brain boosting components. So if you find that you're not sleeping well, you have concerns there, a great thing to talk with your doctor about. Another important part of brain health is to keep your mind active, right? Do mentally stimulating activities. That might mean, learning something new, taking a class, learning a new craft, a new hobby, a new language, a new instrument. It might mean playing games, and especially games that involve strategy. So think about games like bridge or like chess. They're going to be much more challenging for your brain, much better for your brain than playing chutes and ladders with the grandkids, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't play chutes and ladders with the grandkids. You just can't really expect to have a significant effect on your own brain from that. You might consider reading books, reading magazines, and really taking something that you already enjoy, but taking it up a notch, right? So if you always have been an avid reader of the newspaper, have you tried picking up a novel? Or maybe you really love romance novels by a particular author, but maybe you try and read something by a different author or a different genre or something that's written in a bit different style. Or maybe you've always been an avid reader, but have you considered joining a book club? Being in a space where you can talk about what you're reading with other people, hear their questions, ask your questions, gain a new perspective, right? So it's taking something you already love, but kicking it up a notch. You might take a class. Thank you for being on the webinar. This is a great way to learn. You might teach a class. It's a fantastic way to use your brain is to teach other people the process. And you can be really social through work, through volunteering. Other things that you might enjoy could be computer games and brain games. Taking classes is fabulous. Again, reading, finding something. So let's say you love to do the crossword puzzle every day in the newspaper. Fabulous. But my suggestion here is don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Don't only do the crossword puzzle, because what happens is your brain really exercises those functions that are needed to do a good job at the crossword puzzle, but it's not really using other parts of your brain. Your brain just got really good at doing that one thing. Doing a math problem is going to take a very different set of skills than doing a crossword puzzle question, right? So try to vary what you do with your brain. Do those crossword puzzles every day if you love them, that's great, but also try to do some other things that challenge your brain in other ways. Staying connected is an important part of brain health. People who have meaningful activities, for example, who volunteer, say that they feel happier and healthier. Social activities are linked to reduced risk for some health problems like depression and even dementia. There's some kind of a connection there. We see that people who are more socially active tend to have lower rates of dementia with age. There are lots of ways you can stay connected for older adults. You can look at your area agency on aging, participate in local senior center activities, community center activities, look at other community organizations as well. Listening to music is great for your brain. Research has shown us that listening to music, especially music that you love, can enhance cognitive functioning and verbal fluency skills, and it can improve our mental focus and lower our stress hormones. But again, it's finding music that's really meaningful to you. And try to think about how you can take some part of your daily routine and really make it more of a sensory experience. You're really paying attention to what you're smelling and what you're seeing, what you're feeling, etc. So thinking about something like gardening or something like an art project, these are great opportunities to really use all of your senses, to be very in the moment, to be very mindful, and for your brain to be processing all of that information as it comes in. So as far as brain health, what can you do today? I challenge you to pick one thing that you can do that might help your brain. I'm not saying make a New Year's resolution of exercising 5 days a week and only eating a healthy diet and getting 8 hours of sleep at night and all of these things that just feel like too much all at once. But pick one small thing that you can do, like starting today. What can you do? Maybe it's adding in a quick 10-minute walk every morning, or adding an extra glass of water, before you have lunch today, or calling and setting up your next visit with your healthcare provider, right? Write down what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, and consider how you can get some support from family members, friends, or community groups. Tell a friend about what you're planning, what your goal is. Tell a family member. You might find that you have other people who have similar goals in your circle, and you can encourage each other. You might be able to participate in some of these activities together too. So now we're going to shift more into what is dementia. So we've talked about normal aging, but what about when things happen that aren't really normal? So dementia is one of those things that's not a normal part of the aging process. It tends to affect older adults, which is why we associate it with aging, but it's not something that we should just expect is going to happen to all of us as we get older. The word dementia does not mean one specific disease. Dementia describes a group of symptoms that can affect thinking, memory, judgment, language, social abilities, and it means that these symptoms have become so significant that they are severely interfering with daily functioning. They are getting in the way of daily life. So it's not like, like the normal aging, like what did I come into the room for? But a few seconds or even a minute later, I remember, I get that task done and I move on with my day. It was irritating, but it didn't significantly affect my daily life. But if I was walking aimlessly around the house, could not remember what I was going to do next, could never find the objects I was looking for, couldn't articulate my needs to someone else, couldn't remember important information on a regular basis, these are things that are interfering with daily life. So we're going to look at a list of 10 warning signs. These are from the Alzheimer's Association. 10 warning signs of things that are not normal aging. So the first warning sign is memory loss that disrupts daily life. This is like forgetting really important information that you've recently learned. So if I'm driving home and my spouse asked me to stop and pick up some bread, and I got home and I forgot to pick up the bread, and he says, "Where's the bread? I thought you were stopping at the store." That's normal aging stuff. I got distracted. I say, "Oh, you did. I totally forgot. I'm so sorry," right? But if he called me and he said, "One of our kids is in the emergency room, get over here quick," and I jumped in the car and I started driving, and then partway down through my drive, I forgot where I was going and I went home instead. Not normal aging, right? That is significant. So what you might see here in like a friend or a family member, you might see someone who's asking you the same question over and over again because they don't remember they just asked you and they don't remember your answer, or they tell you the same story over and over again. But generally in this very early stage of the disease, this person can still remember things from that long-term memory really, really well. So don't be fooled. This person could probably talk with you at length about where they grew up, how they met their sweetheart, about their career, about important moments from their life. But remembering something that happened a few hours ago or a few days ago, that's what's going to be really difficult to remember. The second warning sign is challenges in planning or solving problems. So planning, this is like sequencing. What do I need to do and in what order do I need to do it to accomplish the greater task? So thinking about getting ready in the morning, right? What do I need to do? My medicine, I got to get dressed, I've got to brush my teeth, I've got to brush my hair, I've got to do all these things. For a normal healthy adult, we can get through that daily routine without too much problem, right? And if a problem does arise, we find a reasonable way to deal with it. Right? If I'm having trouble with my coffee maker, I'm going to think, okay, did I turn it on? Do I have water in the back? Did I blow a circuit? I'm going to probably figure it out. For somebody who's living with some cognitive change, this stuff is going to become harder, right? Deciding what to do and in what order to do it, like following a recipe, that would change, or solving problems. If my stove started on fire, Do I call my family member who lives in Florida to tell them about it? No, that's not reasonable at all, right? So this is again one of those warning signs that every once in a while if something happens, sure, not a big deal, but when this starts to become like the norm, that's when we want to be concerned. The third warning sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or at leisure. So familiar tasks would be things like driving to familiar locations, paying your bills, using your telephone, using the microwave, those kinds of things. We don't have to put a whole lot of brain power into them. We just kind of know how to do those things. Yeah, sure, you get a new smartphone, there's a learning curve there. It takes a while to learn it, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about familiar tasks. For somebody who's living with some cognitive change, that could be one of the areas where they're starting to struggle, right? Making coffee is not something that I can reliably do very well anymore. Maybe it's, I can't keep track of my checkbook and, what I've paid, what I haven't paid, getting to familiar places in my car, I'm getting turned around, I'm getting lost. These are things that you might start to notice in a friend or a loved one who's experiencing some cognitive change. The fourth warning sign is confusion with time or place. So that might mean kind of getting my days and nights mixed up. It might mean having some difficulty following like a clock, following a schedule, difficulty recognizing the passage of time. So if I said to my family member who's experiencing some dementia that Susie is coming to visit us next week, my loved one may not be able to understand when is next week. They may ask me every single day or multiple times a day between now and then, is Susie coming today? Not knowing how far away that time is. And confusion with place. In the early stage of dementia, usually this person is pretty comfortable in their familiar environment, like in their home. But going somewhere new, like if you have a family member who's now come and stayed with you for a few weeks, this is disorienting for that person, right? Being in a new place can be really confusing. The fifth warning sign, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. So this one is really interesting. When I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about an actual problem with your eyes. I'm talking about a problem with your brain and the way the brain is understanding all of that information that our eyes are bringing in. So normal aging, sure, you might need to change your prescription on your glasses. Maybe you develop a condition like glaucoma or macular degeneration. That's not what I'm talking about. What you generally see is difficulty with depth perception. So if I am starting to experience some dementia, I'm driving my car, I'm having a hard time understanding how close or how far away I am to the car in front of me or to the stop sign in front of me. Depth perception, maybe I'm walking along the sidewalk and I get to the point where there's a curb and I need to step down to the street. My brain does not recognize that depth change is there and I'm not expecting it, and now I stumble or maybe I fall when I reach that point. You might notice a lot of difficulty with color contrast. So a set of stairs, right? It's all the same color, same wood or same carpet color. For somebody living with dementia, their brain may not be able to understand where those edges of the stairs are. It may look basically like a flat surface to them. Color contrast, that is also something where, here we go, where let's say we're sitting at the table, we've got a white tablecloth, a white plate, and white food on our plate, a piece of bread. You might notice your loved one is really, really hungry, but they're not eating. Their brain may not be understanding that there is something there on the plate because it's all kind of the same color. So again, not exactly a problem with the eyes, it's more a problem with the brain understanding all of that information the eyes are bringing in. Okay, sixth warning sign, new problems with words in speaking or writing. So communication changes, right? Forgetting about the word that I want to use, which this happens to me every so often, like maybe every day, but not all the time, not in a way that actually gets in the way of my ability to communicate. word finding difficulty, difficulty tracking conversation, adding to conversation, difficulty with understanding like written directions, instructions, you know, all these kinds of communication changes could be taking place in the brain when dementia is occurring. The 7th warning sign, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So losing things, not necessarily the problem if you're someone who's always lost your stuff. I mean, maybe you never know where your keys are, you never know where your glasses are, and they're sitting right on top of your head, right? Some people are just kind of like that. But the problem here is when that person is losing the ability to retrace steps. So for me, healthy adult brain, if I am about to go out to my car and I can't find my keys, they're not in my pocket where I thought they were, I'm going to walk backwards in my mind and I'm going to think about, well, where was I? Where was I when I had my keys last? You know, are they in my purse? Are they in a different jacket? Are they hanging on the hook? You know, did I stop in a different room in the house and maybe I left them like on the kitchen counter? I will be able to retrace my steps and probably find that missing item. For someone who's living with dementia, they're really starting to have a hard time with that. It's hard to walk backwards and remember where I was, what I was doing. So you may find that this person is accusing you or someone else for hiding something or stealing something from them. You may find that they put things in unusual locations. So maybe the milk ends up in the cupboard and the coffee grounds end up in the fridge, or items become hidden to be kept safe, but then your loved one doesn't remember that they hid something and now they think it's missing. Like thinking about, you know, maybe wallets or money being hidden like in a box up in the back of the closet, and then in a couple hours we're leaving to go shopping and now I can't find my wallet. The 8th warning sign is decreased or poor judgment. You know, really making bad decisions on a regular basis. Normal aging, we all make a bad decision once in a while, but this is when it really starts to interfere with daily life. Falling victim to scam after scam after scam, using really poor judgment with money management. You know, and again, some people have just always been bad with money, but this is kind of new and it's getting in the way of everyday life. Decreased or poor judgment could also be things like, you know, should I have my headlights on when I'm driving in the car at night? Or what kind of clothing should I be wearing when I leave the house in the morning? The 9th warning sign, withdrawal from work or social activities. So it's that person pulling back from the things that they used to do, right? Maybe I don't go volunteer 3 times a week like I used to for no particular reason. I'm just not doing it. Maybe I don't go to the worship services for my faith community every week like I used to. Maybe when family members invite me over for like a holiday celebration, you know, I'm turning it down all the time. You know, I'm not up to it, I'm busy, I don't feel well. You know, that person is pulling back. This could be intentional. If that person is aware that they're having some cognitive change, they might be really worried about embarrassing themselves and they don't want to put themselves in a position where that might occur. But for a lot of people, this is not something that's being done intentionally. It's just their brain is not initiating these things anymore. You know, initiating like I should get up and go for a walk. You know, now I'm not going for my walk 2 times a day like I used to. It appears like I've withdrawn from it, but it's just that my brain isn't telling me to get up and do it. And the 10th warning sign is changes in mood or personality, becoming more confused, more irritable, more fearful, more anxious. You know, there can be lots of mood and personality changes. You want to look at what's normal for that person. You know, if they've always been kind of an irritable, kind of crabby person, just because they're crabby and they're 80 years old doesn't mean it's dementia. They've just always been that way. Or let's say I've lost someone near and dear to me and I'm grieving. Sure, I might be more irritable, I might be more anxious, maybe I'm even, you know, withdrawing and using poor judgment and some of these other things. But there's a valid reason for that. I'm grieving. So again, for this warning sign number 10 or even any of the other ones, it's looking at, well, what's normal for this person and has there been a significant change from normal? And if there's been a change, any of these warning signs, why might that be? You know, so maybe I am walking along the sidewalk and when I get to the curb, I don't see it and I stumble and fall. Well, is there a vision problem or is this part of dementia, right? Changes in mood or personality. Is this depression or anxiety or another condition, or is it a sign of dementia? So when we talk about dementia, we won't go too in depth with this. We're going to talk more about these things next week, but I want you to be aware that when someone is experiencing some of these symptoms that I've just talked about, there are so many reasons why that could be happening. There's so many underlying conditions. So on the right here, you see a list of reversible conditions. These are things that can cause these dementia symptoms, but they're treatable or reversible. So thinking about something like a urinary tract infection, for an older adult, that can really mess with cognitive abilities. But it's also pretty easily treated, right? You do the urinalysis, you get on the right antibiotic, and within a few days or a week, you're back to normal. It could be depression that sort of looks like dementia at first glance, but really when you look more into it, it's depression. You just see that there's some overlapping symptoms here. Maybe it's a brain tumor. Maybe it's a metabolic disorder, like a thyroid condition. Maybe it's a medication problem. You know, maybe I started a new pain medication or a new antidepressant or something that's really, you know, causing some cognitive change. Maybe it's a vitamin deficiency. You know, have I been tested for a B12 deficiency? Maybe it's alcohol use. Looks like dementia when you don't remember what happened last night, but maybe it's hidden alcohol use. There's lots of other things that are treatable or reversible that can cause these kinds of symptoms. And then, of course, there are a number of irreversible conditions that could be the culprit here as well. So the most common type of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. There are others, though, including vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, Parkinson's disease dementia, frontal temporal degeneration, which we call FTD, and lots of others as well. But let's say I or my friend, my loved one is experiencing, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 or more of these warning signs. I'm concerned about them. How am I supposed to know what's causing it? How am I supposed to know if it's reversible or not? Seeing the doctor is the key. Seeing the primary care doctor is the perfect first step to try to determine the cause for what's going on. So there are many reasons to get an early diagnosis. We want to make sure that we are ruling out other causes. So maybe it is a vitamin deficiency and months and months and months have gone by and we're just kind of scared of going to the doctor because we're scared of getting some bad news. You know, oh my goodness, is this dementia? Maybe my mother had dementia and I'm really worried about getting it too, and I'm avoiding this whole conversation. This could be months and months have gone by that we could have had a treatment, possibly, right? Or maybe there was a stroke, some mini strokes that occurred in the brain, and we need to really get on top of that to prevent any further damage. So again, really important to go and see the primary care doctor to rule out all those other causes, you know, to really make sure that we haven't missed anything. And then if it is an irreversible type of dementia, like Alzheimer's disease, there are medications that can be helpful. So I want to be clear that these medications, they're FDA approved for use with Alzheimer's disease. They don't actually slow down the progression of the disease itself, but they help the brain compensate. They help the brain function a bit better for a while longer, right? So they're really helpful for a lot of people. They're really important. And, you know, being able to utilize those medications early on could be really significant for this individual. But that means we got to go to the doctor, got to figure out what's going on, and then we have to figure out what kinds of treatments might be available, whether it's for a disease itself or for the symptoms. With an early diagnosis, this is a great time to get involved in clinical trials. There are so many clinical trials happening all over our country, all over the world. For those of you who are here in the DC metro area, we have amazing centers of research, you know, thinking about things like NIH and Johns Hopkins and Georgetown and lots of other great health systems and universities that do a lot of research. Those research studies generally are looking for people in the early stage of the disease, or looking for people who are experiencing what we would call like subjective cognitive decline. You know, it's something that that person they feel like there's a change happening, but nothing shows up on testing, right? Those cognitive assessments and all of that, they're doing just fine on those. These clinical trials are often looking for people who aren't yet even diagnosed. and even for normal, healthy adults too. So maybe you're listening to this webinar as the partner, the care partner to another individual. There may be clinical trials out there that would be great for you too. But getting involved early on is really important, and especially for the person living with this new diagnosis. Getting involved in a clinical trial is a great way to have some type of control over the situation, to work with experts in the field, to have really a high level of care, to have frequent interactions with people who really understand what's going on. And it's one way to really do something for future generations. Hopefully I'll be in a trial that has some benefit to me, but even if not, hopefully this is meaningful for my children, grandchildren, for the larger body of research and scientific information. And then an early diagnosis is really important for planning for the future, which is really a lot of what we're going to go into in our next class. Why is it important to get this early diagnosis? I know it's not, if it were an irreversible form of dementia, that's not news that anybody wants to hear, and I understand that. And I have people sometimes ask me, like, why would I want to know anyway, right? If there's no cure out there, for example, with Alzheimer's, there's no cure, why would I want to know? These are some of the reasons, including that planning for the future piece. And so now I'd love to invite Crystal to rejoin us on the line and share a little bit about Dementia Friendly America.
Thank you, Lindsay. Dementia Friendly America originated in the 2015 White House Conference on Aging. And out of the White House Conference on Aging and Dementia Friendly's birth, there came 8 early adopter locations around the United States. Prince George's County, under the leadership of the county executive, Rashawn Baker, was one of the first early adopter locations in America. Montgomery County, also located in Maryland, was one of the early adopter locations as well. And with Dementia Friendly here in Prince George's County, we opted to separate the county into 3 sections: Northern, Southern, and Mid-County. As the sector lead for Northern Prince George's County, we wanted to make sure this evening you were aware of some of the services that we are offering. Currently, due to COVID-19, we have taken our in-person services and brought them full circle to make them virtual. So as you see on the slide here, we offer caregiver support groups twice a month, and we've added a social distancing support group for caregivers as well as people living in the community that are struggling with the concept of remaining isolated. We continue with our monthly emailed newsletter, and we're also mailing out hard copies. Lindsay earlier mentioned our upcoming caregiver webinars, and as you see, for the next 3 Thursdays at 7 p.m., we have 3 exciting topics coming up. Diagnosis Dementia, Now What? On May 14th. On May 21st, Understanding Communication and Behavior Changes. And on May 28th at 7 p.m., Person-Centered Care at Home. Dementia Friendly Prince George's County is extremely excited because in the month of June, we will be starting our YouTube channel. And all of our educational video series will be available for the general public to view at this time. I also wanted to take this time to thank our sponsor for this evening, which is Tribute at Melford Assisted Living, located in Bowie, Maryland. They were wonderful enough to sponsor this evening's winners of our 10 pizza dinners. So hopefully, viewers at home, you enjoyed them. And thank you again, Tribute at Melford.
So in addition to the Prince George's County resources with Dementia Friendly, there is the phone number there at the top of this slide for the Prince George's County, Maryland Area Agency on Aging. However, you may not be located in Prince George's County, or maybe your loved one isn't. You can find your local area agency on aging by going to eldercare.gov and putting in a zip code, and you will come up with that local area agency on aging. There are lots of other really great resources available to you all around the country related to brain health, aging, caregiving, and also dementia through NIH and also through the CDC. For those who are interested in learning more about clinical trials, I do invite you to visit clinicaltrials.gov. And again, my name is Lindsay, and I'm bringing this information to you from an organization called Insight Memory Care Center, which is a nonprofit adult day health and resource center for those living with memory loss and other types of dementia, their families, and the community, and we're located in Fairfax, Virginia. And thank you for joining us for the class this evening.